My name is James, and I don't have a prepared speech, but I just felt inspired. I was 13 when I met Missy, and I want to share that story. So I know John. He's my best friend of all time. I don't have many friends before the age of 20, because as a military brat, you move, and it's a blessing, but it's also a challenge, and you learn skills everywhere you go. So we were in the Philippines, we moved to Minneapolis, and then we moved to China Lake. And I played football, and I'm still a year older than John. But I don't have to use my glasses yet. This is how it all went down. So I was playing football, and John and I started to get to know each other, but we were on the base, and we played on this team, and it was most of the kids out in town. And I have strong opinions, and I felt like, even though John and I we looked like we were the same age, I was a year older. This is how bad it was. They put me in the 7th grade pictures with John, and I was on the yearbook staff. So, and I always admired John because he's got a great sense of humor. He's even-keeled, and he's just a wonderful friend. But this is how it all went down. So we were out playing football, and the football coach makes everybody run who is not a veteran. And of course, the people who aren't veterans, and this is meaning they played the year before, were the military kids. So I threw my helmet down, and I said, "This is BS," and I took a stand. And John's sitting there looking at me like, because he had already been on the team for a while. He's like, "Oh, this is not going to be good." After practice, I got yelled at. There was a fight. I went home, and we lived about 3 houses down. I went into the kitchen, and my dad was also an aviator. In fact, his helicopter was the H-6 up there. And then the A-7 Corsair, which Chris flew, was pointed out at that beautiful sunset. And I threw my pads down, I opened the door, and I saw all my dad would drink was Olympia beer. And I'm like, and I've never had a beer before, so Mom, put on your earmuffs. I cracked it open, I drank it, and I slammed it, and I was so angry because I thought this was just not right. And all of a sudden I hear this, and I go to the door, and there's John, and he's like, "Hey, my mom wants to talk to you." I've never met her before. I'm like, okay, so I have to go now talk to Commander Anderson's wife, John's mom. I'm like, oh, I must be in more trouble because I used some swear words and stuff. So I walked over, and Missy comes out, and she just goes, "Hi, I'm Missy," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm James," and she's, "Oh, I know," and she goes, "So tell me what happened." And I told her, and it's the first time an adult that wasn't my parents actually listened to me, and we made a connection. That was at age 13, and I saw her on the last night, and that friendship carries on with me today. So you can imagine, since that point in time, I've drank beer with her in Washington, D.C. I stayed at her house in Orlando, and they were living in Orlando at the time. And I was going to the University of New Mexico, and I had gotten in touch with John, and they were driving back from Colorado, and they said, "Come stay with us for the summer or for a couple months." And I was transferring to East Carolina. So I say, "Well, how do I get in touch with you?" I said, "Well, every gas station, when you first get into a state, if there's a Shell station, it's like the first, when you see a Shell station, it's the first one, I think on the right or the left. Stop, wait, we'll be there." I'm like, okay, that's cool. So I load up my truck, all my stuff, the tarp, and I'm driving. And as anybody who's been in Albuquerque and you start heading east, you see these big thunderstorms start rolling up. They're like big giant bandits in the sky. They turn white and orange. But by the time you get to Texas, they are now tornadoes. So the plan was meet in Amarillo, first Shell station on the right, on this highway, and we'll be there at 9 o'clock. So I'm there at like 8:30, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. Now it's 11 o'clock. Now it's 12 o'clock, and there's tornado sirens going. Finally, it's about 12:30, and luckily there was a lot of wind, and all of a sudden, here comes the blue Econo van, right? And there they are, they're like, "Hey, James." And I knew, and so I felt safe. If you wait at the gas station, she will be there. So we split up the cars. We're not stopping. the tornadoes are far enough east, and we're going to Oklahoma. We're going to Jane's place. And we're already 6 hours behind. So we are going across the middle of Oklahoma. I've never seen lightning like that before. It was absolutely amazing. It was like literally like strobe lights and flash floods. And when we rolled into Oklahoma, which is now at, like, the sun was coming up, you can see a funnel cloud go up. We stayed at your house for about 2 hours. And then it's like, let's go. We got to get all the way to Orlando. And so along the way, we would stop and we would leave messages for Missy. And of course, John and I, we drove all the way through. We didn't realize we had already passed them. So after all that happened, we got in a little trouble because, she was naturally worried. But there were times throughout my life where, from that point of 13 to 51 now, where, for example, we would stop in Orlando to visit them for spring break because Pete was still there, and they were wonderful hosts. And my car broke down. My friend's car broke down, and we had to get all the way back to Greenville, North Carolina, and we didn't have any money. So what does Missy do? She goes, "Oh, let's just tow the car with the Econoline." So she got in the car with us. We drove all the way to Greenville, about 8 hours, and then we took it off, and she drove all the way back. And so she had a big heart, and it's because of that heart that I have thought about the friends that I've had throughout the years, and it's kind of unique and wonderful that this woman who had such a big heart had such an impact on my life as a friend. And Craig, I want to thank you because you brought up the thing that I will always be echoing in my mind forever and always is her laugh. And so that was a very wonderful speech, and that's something I will carry forward. And I think that one day, when I see those Shell stations going down the road, I want to walk into the Shell station, the first one on the right, when you get into the state, and just sit there for a little bit, and hopefully one day she'll come rolling in, and we can have a laugh together. The last thing I want to say is about Chris, who is also just a wonderful person throughout my life, and who was always the same when I would meet him. It was like we would never, there was no lost time. It was just like the relationship would pick up. And I want to tell you this story because I always thought he was, I would be playing with John, we'd have practice, and all of a sudden the A7 Corsair would come rolling in. And we would go inside because we knew that he would be home. And on Wednesdays, there was a lady who would come to clean the house. Well, Missy didn't want her to clean the house, so she cleaned the house because she made the best tortillas. And so we'd go eat tortillas. And then I was asking Chris about the story because I was an aviation enthusiast because of my father as well. And he told me this story about how the Secretary of Navy came to town. So he decided, and this is a true place, it's up in Death Valley. It is now called Star Wars Canyon, but at the time it was called Rainbow Canyon. And what the military does is they'll do low-level flying through there. But he was like one of the first, and he told me the story. He took the Secretary of the Navy, put him in the back of the plane, the jet, and he flew right across the Salt Lake bed, up through this beautiful canyon. He turned, and he rolled out of it into a barrel roll. And I was like, that is amazing. Where is it? And he told me it's way up in the desert. You have to go here and there. And I kept it in my mind. And many, many decades later, before I'm marrying my wife, we're driving down through the desert. And I said, I want to take you to this place. So we drove like 60 miles, and I'd never been there before. And he described this to me. And I went out onto the point, and we're standing there. And then my girlfriend at the time, who was not sure if she was going to marry me or not, was looking at me. It's 120 degrees. We're on this point in the middle of the desert, and I know this is the canyon because I can see the rainbow stratification in the walls, and because Chris was such a good storyteller. And I sat out there, now it's like 30 minutes, and I'm like, well, that's it. I'm completely embarrassed, and I'm like, let's go. And as we start to turn around, all of a sudden, you hear an F-18 come roaring through, diving over, and now they went in the reverse way, dove over, went flying by the seat of their pants right by us. I could see the flight helmet and the goggles, and the guy looking at us, and I was like, this is amazing because this whole story came true because of what he told me many years before. And I'll close with this. When I stood up there and I looked out at that beautiful sunset, I imagined that the only thing that was missing was 2 seats in that cockpit, right? Because I know that Chris and Missy were right there, ready to shoot off into that beautiful sunset. And I will always remember them that way. And I appreciate the Anderson family, and I appreciate that I've been somehow in some small way a part of that story. So thank you very much.